What's up everybody? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, what I want to do is tell you a story. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. It's the story of the Iliad, as told by Homer. Now, this story is ancient. We don't even know exactly how old it is. It could be 3,000 years old, it could be 4,000 years old, but it has had a massive influence on Western thinking, plays, drama, thoughts about the afterlife, what our responsibility is. And as part of the AP curriculum, what I want us to do to focus on is how is persuasion used in this text so that we can understand persuasion that's used in later text. I want to give you a little bit of background on the Iliad before we really jump in, a little bit about who wrote it, how it was performed, and how it's been adapted. The key for you today is to kind of step outside of who you are in the 21st century and try to bring yourself back to a time of campfire stories and a tradition of stories not as something that we see in a movie theater or that we read in a book, but something that's performed and told by master storytellers. And that's where our story really begins, with a character or a series of characters who go by the name of Homer. Homer is the supposed author of the Iliad. Some people argue that Homer was one dude. Some people argue that Homer was many people. These broadly break down into the Unitarians. The Unitarians think that Homer was one guy. The analysts think that Homer was many people. Maybe he was a series of blind prophet style presenters. Some people have even suggested that he was a she. It's a very interesting kind of debate that old bearded, mostly men, though I imagine there are probably women, though I doubt that they have beards, will stand up and argue very vociferously and passionately about the identity of Homer, even 3,000, maybe 4,000 years after these stories were first told. Regardless, it comes out of a tradition of master storytellers, and I mean absolutely master storytellers on a scale that we can't even really imagine today, except for perhaps in the form of like master rappers or poets who can get up and just recite dozens and dozens of lines very quickly that rhyme and have a meter. And why I say poets, for example, or rappers, is Homer told this story as a poetic, epic tale. And when I say epic, I mean it's a journey narrative that follows a poetic structure that we call epic poetry. Epic poetry is characterized by its meter. It's got a dactylic hexameter for a meter. What I mean by meter is that each line is composed of a series of different parts, a series of grouped syllables. So hexameter means that there are 6 of these groups in each line, hexa being 6, meter being the line. A dactyl is a measurement of syllable beats, so long, short, short. So long syllable, short syllable, short syllable. Long syllable, short syllable, short syllable. Okay, that's a dactyl. One of those is a dactyl. So dactylic hexameter, loosely, sounds a bit like this. Bum da da 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 bum bum. That's usually the end is 2 long syllables at the end. Or it could be bum da da again. That's the room that the bard or the presenter of the poem has to operate. They can choose to kind of change that last foot up a little bit, the last foot of the meter up a little bit. So dun da da 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 dun dun. It sounds a bit like a drum beat, and you have to imagine that beat on every line. So each word following bum 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 bum, like a rap song, but stretched over. Let's see. Knock my wolf down. Stretched over this many pages, all memorized. That's the level of skill that we're talking about. And so these guys, potentially even women, would get up and present this massive poem, this story of great warriors marching to battle, fighting each other, trying to overcome their fate and challenge the gods of the time, to the bum 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 bum, like that beat over and over and over again. So it's really important to keep that in mind as I'm telling you the story. And unfortunately, I've got no rhythm, so I can't do my story in the Dactylic Hexameter that would do it justice. So just bear with me, and I apologize for that. But do try to imagine this is that campfire. A great bard has stepped upon the scene. Your spit of meat is roasting by the fire, and you're listening to a story about ancient times, a story before science really has any great explanations for why the world is the way that it is, and people rely on supernatural explanations for everything. Why the ground shakes, why the rain falls, why people fall in love or go into war. All of these drives of the psyche to natural phenomena are explained by the actions of the gods. And the story begins, as many of these stories begin, at the home of the gods, at the top of Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus is this heavenly abode where the sky gods, the most powerful of the gods, dwell, though there are great gods that live in the ocean, and there are great gods that live in the underworld. And when I say great, I mean immensely powerful. Gods of sleep, of death, tend to be in the underworld, whereas gods of the sea are associated with, obviously, water, and but also horses and different cities. The gods of the sky are having a wedding. There's a wedding between a great demigoddess and a mortal king. And every one of the gods are invited to this fabulous party. It's the place anyone would want to be who's anyone. And so everyone's decked to the nines, looking fabulous, having a great time at this fancy ball, all except for one. One goddess was not invited. And this is the goddess of discord, the goddess of bad luck, the goddess of chaos. The one thing you do not want at a wedding, right? Chaos. Though, interestingly enough, in many dramas and in real life, I've been to some weddings that are pretty damn chaotic. Excuse my language. But this goddess, Eris, does not take kindly to not being invited to this wedding. So she devises a plan. She goes to the sacred tree and she plucks from it a golden apple. This is the same tree that Hercules has to go to on one of his last journeys and get one of these apples. This is the thing that all the gods want for some reason, these golden apples. She takes one of these golden apples and, using her magical writing, whatever, she inscribes on it, "To the fairest of them all." She shows up at the gates of this party, straight gate crashes it, takes this apple, and she rolls it into the midst of the crowd. There's a melee. People are going nuts. Gods are flying all over the place, trying to grab this apple so that they could give it to their beloved. Female goddesses are pulling each other's hair out, scratching each other's eyes. It's pandemonium in the wedding. People are screaming and flying and jumping out of the way. Finally, the melee kind of separates and three goddesses are clutching it in kind of this three-way tug-of-war battle. On one side, you have the queen of the gods and goddesses, Hera. She is the goddess of the hearth and the home, the goddess of the family. She is the wife to the king of the gods, and she is the mother of all of the sky gods, Hera. She has one side of it, pulling. On the other side is Aphrodite. Aphrodite is the goddess of love and lust and beauty. She's the one who gave birth to Cupid, the winged messenger who shoots the arrow and makes you fall in love. She's pulling on another side of it. On the last side is Athena. Athena is the goddess of intelligent warfare, wisdom, and crafts. She is the patron of Athens, the home of democracy. So that can give you a kind of sense of what she represents. She's kind of like this, she's the embodiment of the intelligent state that can manage itself and can do so with justice. So these three goddesses are pulling on this apple, and all three of them at the same time turn to Zeus and say, pick. Which of us gets the apple? You're the judge, you're the father, you have to pick. Now Zeus, being a clever judges that his life is about to get a lot worse if he picks one over the other two, because the other two are going to complain at him for the rest of eternity. How come you didn't pick me? I'm your daughter, or I'm your wife. So he knows that he's gonna get it, and there's no way that he can come out on top unless he kind of bends the rules, which is something that the gods can do, but human beings can't really do, which is going to be one of the themes that we'll talk about as we get more into the Iliad itself. This is just the backstory. Alright, so Zeus is looking around, trying to figure out a solution, and finally spots a mortal man down on a mountainside tending to his sheep. He recognizes this man. Aha, this is a prince, a royal, an important guy. If anybody will be respected among the gods, it's this good-looking royal prince character. I'll get him, he'll make the choice, and that'll get me out of this hot spot. So he reaches down, picks this dude up, puts him on the Mount Olympus and says, look, you gotta pick which one of these three deserves this apple. And Paris is like, where am I? What's going on? You're gods. He's just blown away. And in this kind of moment where he can't really collect his bearings, Hera slides up to him and says, look, I know you're overwhelmed, but just listen. If you pick me, I will make you the king of Asia, all of Asia. Okay? No one will be as wealthy or as powerful as you will be. And Paris is like, whoa. And just as he's about to pick Hera, Athena slides up to him and says, so having Asia is good and all, but what if I could give you the whole world? I'll make you unbeatable in battle. With cunning and intelligence and enough work, you'll be able to rule the world if you want to. What's better than that? And again, Paris is taken aback. The world, it's greater than I could have ever imagined. And just as he's about to pick Athena, Aphrodite slides up to him and says, look, I know that they promised you a lot, but if you pick me, I'll give you the most beautiful woman in the world to be your wife. And he immediately picks her. The problem was, that woman was already married. She's married to someone who lives in a kingdom across the Mediterranean sea in Greece, specifically in Sparta. This guy's name is Menelaus, and he is a king. The woman, Helen of Sparta. Now, Paris is also a prince. His brother, Hector, and he go to the home of Menelaus on a peace mission. There, they meet Menelaus, they meet Helen, and immediately Helen falls madly in love with Paris. The two escape when there's a moment to, when there's like a break, I suppose, and they run back to where Paris is a prince in his kingdom called Troy. Well, when Menelaus finds out, he is furious. And he goes to his elder brother, who's also a king in a nearby kingdom. His name is Agamemnon. And he says, "Brother, you promised me on a sacred oath that if anything ever happened in my marriage, you would defend the honor of it." And he said, "Indeed I did. Well, let's get our boys together and let's roll." So they get the other kings of Greece, Odysseus, Ajax, Achilles, Idomeneus, a bunch of different kings. They get these guys together and they sail for Troy, ransacking and pillaging as they go. They are going to get Menelaus' wife back, and they are going to take control of Troy, which is a very powerful kingdom. And they're going to do it for two reasons. One, for glory, and this is going to be one of the vocabulary words that we're going to talk about when we get into our second video. But another is honor. Menelaus has had his honor stripped from him, and he needs to reclaim it. Now, they're battling 10 years, taking over different villages, taking over different temples, taking over different places. And one of the temples that they take over is home, let's say, to the sun god, Apollo. Apollo is a very, very powerful god. As you might imagine, sun's pretty important. Apollo is not only the god of the sun, he's the god of music, of archery, of medicine. This guy is serious. So, when you take over his temple, you better know what you're doing. Unfortunately, the Greeks weren't super concerned. So, they take over his temple and they steal one of the daughters of the high priest of Apollo. Now, this guy, his name is Chryses. He is tremendously upset by this. So he goes kind of hat in hand to Agamemnon and the other Greeks in the camp, and he says, "Please, sir, my daughter, she's all that I have. Please give her back to me. I will give you everything that I have. I will give you all the gold that's left to me. I will be destitute and poor for the remainder of my life. Just give me my daughter back." And Agamemnon spits on this guy's face. He says, "Get up out of here, old man, for I whip you with my royal scepter." It goes like that with this cane. And Chryses is defeated. He's got nothing to do. Agamemnon's a great warrior and a king, and this is an old man with no other means to get his daughter back except to beseech the gods. And he goes to the top of a mountain and he prays to the sun. He says, "Apollo, if I've ever offered you a worthy sacrifice, if I've ever built a temple that pleased you, help me get my daughter back." And Apollo hears him and agrees. So he flies down from heaven, takes one of his mighty arrows, and fires it into the Greek encampment. Mows down dozens of animals. Not with a shaft of an arrow per se, Now it's just a metaphor. They get a plague. There's a plague in their camp. He takes another arrow, boom, kills another swath of animals with plague. Takes another arrow, boom, starts killing off men. Men start getting the plague. Now, in a wartime, plague is bad. That's a terrible, terrible thing. So for 9 days, the Greeks are getting smashed by this plague. So they call all their captains and call all their kings and all their prophets and prophesiers together, and they say, we gotta figure out what the heck is going on. Our men are being slaughtered by the dozens, hundreds by this plague. What did we do wrong? And Achilles says, look, prophets, you're not fighting. You gotta tell us what we have to do in order to make sure that we can win this war. And so one of the prophets stands up and says, Achilles, you're one of the greatest warriors, if not the greatest warrior out here. You might be immortal for all we know. You have to promise to protect us no matter what we say. And Achilles is like, yeah, sure, whatever, no problem. I got your back. And so the guy says, well, here's the thing. When Agamemnon stole that daughter of the priest of Apollo, the guy went and prayed to Apollo, and now Apollo's killing us. And we have to give that girl back, otherwise we're never going to get rid of this plague. And Agamemnon, once again, furious. It's like, bearers of bad news. How dare you come up here and say those kinds of things? You are useless, dog-faced, horrible barkers. Starts swearing at him, yelling at him. And Achilles is like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, hold on. I said I'd protect this guy. He told us the truth. Now, we've got to listen to him. So Agamemnon says, you know what? Fine, I'll give her back. But what about mine? What about me? What about Agamemnon? Maybe I'll take your prize, Achilles. Maybe I'll take your slave girl instead. And Achilles does not take that lightly. His pride, his honor is insulted. He looks at him and says, you wouldn't dare. He's like, I will. I want her. Bring her to me. And Achilles just about draws his sword, ready to kill Agamemnon for the slight. Well, the gods step in and intervene because they're like, wait, please don't do that. You're gonna win this war, just don't kill this guy. Okay, because if you do that, then you're not gonna win this war. And Achilles is furious because, well, what am I supposed to do then? I can't, and then I can't? Well, to hell with it then. So he throws his sword on the ground and says, you know what, take her. I'm not gonna be part of this unjust system. I've had enough of it. Throws his stuff. I'm not gonna fight anymore. And Achilles, the greatest warrior of the Greeks, leaves the meeting. Refuses to fight. Well, the Greeks go from bad to worse. First they had a plague, and now their greatest warrior is not going to fight. So the Trojans really start wrecking house, and they push the Greeks now all the way back to their camp, which is a series of ships along the Mediterranean Sea. So on one side you've got a giant hostile army, and on the other side you've got the sea, and you've got nowhere to go. So now the Greeks are having another meeting, and they've got to figure out a way to get Achilles back. That's where we're going to pick up in our next video. What's going to be important for us when we get moving forward more and more is we've got to get some key terms down, and that's what we're going to talk about a little bit next time. We're also going to focus on the reading strategy, which is suspending who you are as a 21st century watcher and trying to put yourself in the shoes of a listener in that ancient time. Finally, we've got a couple of analysis questions that we're going to be looking at. First of all, we're going to try to figure out, is the embassy successful? The embassy to Achilles. Does it work? Why or why not? The other thing that we want to focus on as we're thinking about what's good persuasive technique is which of the persuasive techniques of the three that have to go and talk to Achilles to get him to come back and fight, which of them is the most successful and why? How do we know that it's successful? The last question is the opposite of that. Which one is the least successful and why? So that's what we're going to pick up in our next video. I appreciate the attention. Bye-bye.